Bring in Julian Salisbury. He is global head of Goldman Sachs Asset Management, which has over $2 trillion in assets. I'm sure your phone was, as the kids say, blowing up, Julian, with what was it? What was yesterday? Just a one-off, one-hit wonder? The market version of Dexy's Midnight Runners?
Look, I think it was... We've seen over the last few months, really, that people have just been waiting for a light at the end of the tunnel. And every time there's a sense that we may be seeing some moderation in inflation, we see these risk-on moves. And, it was a particularly extreme version of that yesterday, given the data print, combined with a couple of the other factors you talked about in China and Ukraine. I think it's hard to see this being a long-term sustained rally, until we start to see, we start approaching until we really start seeing a light at the end of the tunnel on rates and inflation. And then I also think as people start getting more confidence around that, attention is going to then start turning to the earnings outlook. And what we're certainly hearing from our portfolio companies is that whilst they are expecting and sensing some moderation in earnings and pressure on earnings, that's still yet to feed through. So you may see a scenario where, whilst people get more confident about the rate outlook, that we still have the worst to come in terms of some of the earnings information that's going to come through. So I think until that's started to play through, it's hard to see a sustained rally here.
Okay, let's talk about individual groups, because the macro market, we can kind of flip a coin and probably be almost just as right at this point. I want to talk about renewables, Julian. I do a lot of work on energy, as we know. I mostly talk about the dinosaur juice, obviously fossil fuels, but renewables are going to be a big part of the coverage going forward as well. And here's the thing. We got the world in Egypt right now talking about climate change, the Inflation Reduction Act, $300 billion being thrown in tax credits at a lot of these renewable strategies. I hate to use the term no-brainer when it comes to renewable investments, because that might make me sound like an FTX investor perhaps at this point, but it seems like there's a lot of tailwinds.
There are huge tailwinds. This is one of the biggest secular themes to invest around over the next 10, 20 years. Absolutely. Word of caution, it was also a huge theme, back in the kind of 2007, 8, 9 period.